Welcome to Expats Everywhere. Can you tell us your name, where you're from, and a little bit about yourself?
Okay, my name's Zach Fromme, and I'm from Indiana. I graduated university with a degree in psychology, and then I moved abroad to teach English. I taught in Korea for 3 years, and then China for 1 semester, but we stayed a little longer, so 6 months in China.
All right, 6 months in China. So what was it like working there?
Working there was great. It was probably the easiest job we've ever had. We were teaching around 13, 14 hours a week. So the schedule was really good. The classes were huge.
Huge. Like how many students?
Anywhere between 40 to 60 students in a classroom.
Wow. And what age group was that?
They were middle school age, so early teens, and then I also had 2 high school classes in another building.
Okay, so you said you were working in China. What city were you in?
We were technically in Beijing, but it was Metro Beijing, so we were out more east and north of Beijing, out past the airport. So it's barely Beijing. It was a town called Xinyi.
Okay, so it's considered Beijing, but it's not what you would think like downtown Beijing.
Right. It took us maybe 45 minutes to an hour to go from the school to what you'd consider downtown Beijing.
Okay, well, let's talk about school. What did a typical day look like for you?
We worked at a boarding school, so we lived on campus. We would wake up early, like with the students. We'd go eat breakfast around 6:30, go back to the room, get ready for classes. Because we had so few classes, we really didn't teach that much. So we would have like 1 or 2 classes before lunch, maybe 3 on a busy day. Then we would go to lunch, and then you would have a 2-hour lunch. So you would eat fairly quickly because the lunch area wasn't large enough for all of the students and staff. So you would eat quickly and then go back to your room and take a nap. They actually encouraged you to fall asleep after lunch. Just make sure you got up to go to class after that.
Okay. So when you weren't in the classroom, were you required to be in an office at a desk, or could you go home?
Because we lived on campus, it really didn't matter where we were. If a student wanted to get a hold of us, they could. In between classes in the morning, they wanted you to be in the office, but you really didn't have to be there.
All right, so what was it like that students knew where you lived? Did they come knocking on your door all the time? Or?
Well, on our floor, they weren't allowed to come up, but they could get a hold of us if they wanted to. They could send another teacher or make a phone call. So it wasn't like you didn't always have students around you, but if you left your room and got down on a lower level or onto the main campus, you definitely had students at least staring at you, if not coming up to you and talking.
Okay, so at least they weren't allowed on your floor, so it's not like they could be knocking on your door.
Right, you could have private time.
Okay, cool. Now, are you aware of any other different jobs for teaching in China? Did you know of anyone who had a different job?
So we worked in a private boarding school. You can work in public schools there. You can also work in private schools like we did, and there's also international schools in China that you can work at.
And do you think the days are a typical day like you had, or would the work hours be more or less?
On our contract, they said up to 22 hours.
Okay.
So depending on who you sign contracts with, you can work really like sweet hours that we had, or you could have a full packed day. If you were working in an international school, you would definitely have a normal teacher schedule like you would back in the U.S. You'd show up to school maybe 30 minutes to an hour before school started, and then you'd have to stay an hour to 2 hours after school ended, or maybe if you're doing extracurriculars after school, coach that as well.
Okay, so let's talk about money. How much money did you earn there?
All right, now because we lived on campus and they provided 3 meals a day, we lost money that way because that's what they were providing. We were getting paid around $800 a month to work and live there. But with everything in China being so cheap, you really didn't feel like you were making that little amount. But you were nowhere near saving what you could say somewhere else. If you were working in an international school, you'd be making way more school money. So
Okay.
our situation was really low pay, but really low hours and no complications. They handled everything for us.
Okay, so pay was a little lower, but you didn't have to worry about housing or food.
Right.
Okay, so maybe other schools might pay a little more, but they wouldn't offer food, for example.
Right. And if you had a school that didn't offer housing, you would also get paid a lot more because you have to pay for housing.
Right, so almost like they would build in the housing into your salary or give you
Right.
a housing stipend or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so with what you made, were you able to save anything?
Because of what our visa situation was, we had to leave every couple months. So we saved up money for our trip to leave the country and then come back for our visa situation. If we didn't have to leave, we would have saved a little bit, but because of the low amount that you're making, you're not really saving a large amount of money.
Okay, so your visa situation, the school didn't pay for you to leave the country. You
No,
had to leave
yeah,
the
that was on
country.
us.
Okay, now would you just make a visa run or would you make it a vacation?
It was a extended weekend, so it was like 4 days. It was a short vacation for us, but you could definitely consider it just a visa run. They said they thought we were going to go to Hong Kong, but because of the short trip, we would have the cost to get on a train, spend the day, the full 24 hours in a train to get down there. We would only spend a day or two in Hong Kong and then have to turn around and do an overnight train back and then be tired for classes on Monday. So we just hopped on a plane and went back to Korea for basically 3 days and then flew back.
Okay, so the school is okay with this, like you'll be missing 1, maybe 2 days to
Right.
do a visa run. And how often did you have to do that?
We had to leave the country, I think, every 3 months. And because we stayed for 6, we left in the middle and then left at the very end again.
Okay, so would you say this is a good visa to have, or are there other visas that are available that would be better?
Technically, it wasn't a work visa.
Okay.
It was an extended multiple entry visa to China. There's a lot of sketchiness about working in China because they have a system. I forget the name in Mandarin, but it's like a good old boy system. Like everyone knows someone that can get you a permit to do something.
Okay.
So when we first arrived in school, the head security officer took our passports, went to the main office to and then talked to his friend and got our stamps to allow us to work in the country. But technically, visa-wise, the government didn't know we were working in the country. But
Okay.
as in Xinyi, we would never be in trouble
Mm-hmm.
because of it. It's just the back channels, the back way, paying this friend or this friend to get you whatever you need.
And is this common, would you
Yeah,
say, in China?
It's from the people I've talked to, it's very common in China.
Okay, so maybe you shouldn't be too worried if a school wants to do it that way, or...
I would be worried just because you're breaking the law. If you get in trouble, you're going to get into a lot of trouble.
Okay.
Like there's no small infractions that you're going to incur if you get in trouble if you're breaking the law in China. Like if you do something wrong and you get caught, they're going to hit you with the full force that they can.
And would that fall on you or the school?
And it would fall on us
Okay.
because the school would just throw their hands up, talk to the people that they know and say, we didn't know.
Okay, so someone should probably look into having a legit visa.
Yeah, if you want to work in China and money is your concern, like you want to save money, you want to be able to travel more and do stuff like that, you should definitely go with the proper channels.
Okay. So if someone's moving, how much money should they bring with them just to get started?
If your school is providing housing, you really don't need that much. If it's one person, $500 would be plenty. If you want to go out and spend, have really nice dinners and stuff like that, maybe $1,000. If you have to pay for housing for the first week or two, depending on what you would consider a nice hotel, you would be paying a little bit more, so maybe $1,000. When we first got there, the school helped us find a hotel to spend the first couple of weeks there. If you have someone speaking Mandarin, you can definitely find a really nice hotel. Well, what I would consider a really nice hotel for around $35. So a really nice hotel to me has clean sheets, clean towels, clean pillows, and when I lay down, I'm not touching all four walls.
Okay. So walking in as a foreigner, they're going to give you a higher price for the same hotel?
Yes.
Okay.
They'll even have it posted where it is in Mandarin or Chinese characters. This is what this price is for locals, and this is what the price is for foreigners.
Okay, so if you know someone, you'll get a better deal.
Yeah, you'll get a better deal, and you'll also know where to go.
Okay. How about packing? What should someone pack? What's the weather like?
We were in Beijing, so it was up more north, up far as China goes. So you have all the seasons. You have all the seasons, but spring and fall are maybe a week long. So it goes from really cold to really hot really fast. So you definitely need winter clothes and summer clothes. But China's huge. If you're further south and you're closer to Hong Kong, you would need far less winter clothes. You could get by with just a jacket instead of a full-on winter coat.
Okay. Does it snow in Beijing?
It flurried a couple times, but nothing ever really stuck.
Okay. And what about in the summer? Is it like really humid or dry or?
Well, with the pollution of Beijing, you don't really notice if it's humid because you're always hacking anyways.
So the pollution's really bad.
Oh, it's horrible. We were out of Beijing where we were, and we were maybe a couple miles away from some mountains. Most of the time we couldn't see it. On a clear day, we're like, wow, this view's amazing. So you have 2 days out of the 4 months we were actually at the school, like maybe 2 or 3 days, you were like, wow, the view's great. And the rest was smog.
Oh, wow. So is there anything you can do or bring to not feel like it's as polluted or like make it a safer environment in your...
When we were there, we read a lot. I was reading probably 4 books a week.
Oh, okay.
So bring maybe an e-reader if you're okay with electronic books. If not, definitely have someone back home willing to start sending you books.
Okay. All right, good. So not much to do, not much to see. So
I mean, once you get all the big things out of the way, there's really not a lot to do. I mean, I play a game, a board game that's popular in China and all of Asia. So I would make a trip maybe once or twice a week into downtown Beijing, and I would go to a place and I would play with the locals there.
Now, going back to the pollution, would that ever ruin plans for you, or not really? Just get used to it.
You kind of get used to it. It didn't really, other than running outside, it didn't change any of our plans.
Okay. So you mentioned reading ebooks, books like that. Anything else that maybe you can't find in China or in Beijing that you should bring with you?
At that point, we still had a lot of stuff that we had from our previous stay in Korea. So we didn't have to worry about going shopping for like deodorant. Deodorant's notoriously hard to find in China or Korea. If you do find it, it's typically a lot more expensive. So maybe bring an extra stick or two depending on how long you're staying. Other than that, I'm not really picky on shampoo or body wash. So I would just go to a local supermarket and pick it up.
Okay. Let's talk about safety. Is China safe? Did you feel safe in Beijing?
Yeah, I definitely felt safe. I never felt worried about any criminal activities. I'll put it that way. But you definitely take your life into your own hands when you get into a taxi cab. They're driving there scares me completely.
And did you see accidents, or they're just crazy, but they seem to never get in a wreck?
I think they're all aware of how they drive, so they fit into the system. I would personally never drive in China.
Okay. How did you meet people there? Friends?
Just the school would offer trips, so we would sign up for those and meet new people that way. Like I said earlier, I play a board game that's popular in Asia, so I would meet people through that. I would go and sit down with locals, try to fumble my way through a language, and then play a game. Okay,
so did any of the locals speak English at all, or?
There were a few that could speak a little bit, but also, when they're the only ones who can speak a little bit, they tend to be shy away from it because they don't want to look foolish trying to say something. But, I would try to speak their language and they would try to speak my language, so it balanced out.
All right. So what about like road signs and things like that? Can you find that stuff in English or?
Yeah, it was in Beijing for the most part. It was in both Chinese and English.
Okay, so it's probably best to have a bit of an understanding of Chinese or Mandarin, I guess.
Yeah, in China, I don't think you can fully survive in the country without at least getting the emergency basics, like this hurts, I'm sick, basic directions, and then numbers for paying for things.
Okay. So what kind of things did you do for fun?
We try to stay semi-healthy by working out a little bit. We would go to coffee shops and read and people watch. We only spent 6 months there, so there was still a lot of sightseeing to do. So we went down and saw the Forbidden City and walked around the parks down through there. We made a trip or two. We made 2 trips to the Great Wall. It was a short ride there. Saw the one that has been completely redone with the slide from the top to bottom if you don't want to climb the billion stairs you have to climb. And then we also went to the older part where half of it's fixed up. The other half is what it looks like today without any modifications. That was really cool.
All right, great. Now, would you say that Beijing is a good travel hub to get to other parts of China and other parts of Asia or the world?
I would say yes, but it's a little more expensive flying out of China and back into China versus if you were somewhere else in Asia. Like if you were in Bangkok, Thailand, it would be cheaper to get a flight to go somewhere else than it would be if you were in Beijing.
Okay. So, do you remember about how long it would take from, say, Beijing to Bangkok on an airplane? Is it close? Is it far?
I would say 5-6 hours.
Okay, so still pretty far.
Yeah.
So, because Beijing is in the northern part of China, maybe Russia would be a closer option?
Mongolia, Korea, Japan, those 3 are really close.
Okay.
Parts of Russia, but I'm not really familiar with any,
None
on that coast.
The bigger cities, I guess.
Everything else is more on the European side, the east side.
Okay, and then you mentioned earlier a train. You could take a train to Hong Kong, but it was like a 24-hour.
Yeah, it was an overnight, and it was actually cheaper to book a flight to Korea and back than it was to get a ticket to go from Beijing to Hong Kong. Because when you're on a train that long, you want to lay down. So you want to pay for not just a seat on the train, but a bed.
Okay, so
a sleeper.
They have trains, buses, things like that to get around.
Yes.
But they're not necessarily very cheap.
No, by no means are they cheap.
Okay, so it's almost better to just take a flight out of China.
Out of China to go somewhere else, yes.
Okay. So lastly, let's talk about the pros and cons. What are some pros and cons of living in China?
Pros of living in China. As far as the job goes, the students are amazing. Like we had large classrooms, 40 to 50 to 60 students in a classroom. But never did you have to raise your voice. Once the bell rang and you let them know it's time to start, it was silence. You asked them to do things, they would attempt to do them, even if their English wasn't as strong as others in the classroom. They would definitely try to communicate with you in English. China is amazing as far as food goes for me, and just the typical architecture going around. Cons. China is dirty. There's trash everywhere. People just drop it and walk. Like even if there's a trash can 2 feet to the right of them, they'll still let the trash hit the ground and walk away. The pollution's horrible. And to really enjoy yourself there, you have to learn at least the basic parts of the language. The kids speak as far as language goes, like I'm tired, I'm hungry, stuff like that. So you're learning a language even if you don't want to, like, to be able to survive in the country, you have to learn a little more than survival Mandarin.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much for telling us a little bit about China today.
Yeah, no problem.